Hey everyone, Holly here. I'm 32 and I'm coming to you from my little apartment in Reno. You might look at me and think, okay, she seems all right, but for a long time, my life felt like I was serving up happiness for everyone else while running on empty myself. I've been a server for years, which, let me tell you, teaches you a lot about putting on a smile even when you're aching inside. It's taught me resilience, sure, but it also taught me how easy it is to disappear, to become just part of the background noise while other people live their main characters' lives. I had a dream, something I was quietly working towards, tucked away in stolen moments after long shifts carrying trays and faking pleasantries. It was my little secret garden, a place I went in my head when the reality of bills and exhaustion felt too heavy. It felt fragile, though, easily trampled, especially by the people who were supposed to be closest to me. My family. Well, it's complicated, isn't it always? There was this dynamic, a subtle imbalance I never quite articulated until everything shattered. I was the reliable one, the quiet one, the one who didn't rock the boat, the one who always said yes. And because I was always there, always dependable, it somehow translated into me being the one who could be leaned on, overlooked, and, ultimately, taken for granted. Profoundly taken for granted. There's a moment, a specific night, that changed everything. It started like any other family dinner, a performance of normalcy masking years of unspoken tensions and subtle hurts. My brother was there. My parents. We were eating. The television was on low in the background. Just noise. And then, he said something. Something dismissive. Something cruel about my life choices. About my dream. It hit hard, landing right in the tender spot where my self-doubt already lived. I felt the familiar sting, the urge to retreat, to minimize my own pain. And just as I was sitting there, trying to swallow the hurt with a forced bite of food, the noise from the television wasn't just noise anymore. It became sharp, focused, breaking news. And it was about an investment that involved my family, an investment I knew nothing about. It was a secret that had been kept from me, a secret that spoke volumes about where I stood, or rather, where I didn't stand, in their eyes. This wasn't just about money, it was about trust. It was about value. It was about a pattern of behavior that had defined my place in the family for decades. And in that moment, sitting at that dinner table with those words and that news hanging in the air, I realized I couldn't be the quiet one anymore. The silence was costing me too much. So, let me tell you what happened. Let me tell you about the quiet girl who finally found her voice. And please, let me know in the comments if any part of this resonates with you. Have you ever felt overlooked? Have you ever had a moment when you realized the people you loved most had fundamentally betrayed your trust? I'd really like to know where you're watching from, too. It helps to feel less alone. My life before that night felt like a series of muted watercolors, pleasant enough on the surface, blending into the background, lacking sharp definition or vibrant color of its own. I worked at a busy family restaurant downtown, a place with red vinyl booths and the perpetual smell of coffee and frying onions. It was honest work, tiring work. My feet ached by the end of every shift, my smile felt pasted on, but the tips paid the bills, mostly. Rent from my small apartment took a chunk, groceries another, and the rest I squirreled away, every spare dollar going towards my dream. My dream was writing. Not fancy poetry or literary novels, but screenplays. I loved movies, the way stories could transport you, make you feel. I spent my late nights hunched over my laptop after getting home from the diner, fingers flying across the keyboard, crafting worlds and characters that felt more real to me than the reality of stacking clean plates and refilling water glasses. It was my escape, my passion, my quiet rebellion against a life that often felt small and predetermined. I told almost no one about it, especially not my family. My family was complicated. My parents, bless their hearts, were rooted in a different generation, with different expectations. My mom was a homemaker, meticulous and anxious, forever worried about appearances. My dad was steady, quiet, ran a small construction business that had seen better days but kept them afloat. And then there was my brother, Mark, 3 years older than me, golden child, destined for greatness according to my parents. Mark was ambitious, loud, charming when he wanted to be, and utterly self-absorbed. He'd gone off to college, got a good job in finance down in the city, and whenever he came home, it felt like a royal visit. I was the reliable daughter, the one who stayed close, who could be counted on. Did the grocery shopping for Mom when her back was bad? Sure. Helped Dad with the business paperwork after a double shift? Of course. Lent Mark money when he was between apartments or waiting for a bonus? Always. It was never a grand pronouncement, just a quiet expectation that I would be there, my needs secondary, my life pliable to theirs. My servers' wages, hard-earned in sweat and sore feet, often disappeared into small loans that were rarely repaid, or last-minute requests I felt unable to refuse. There was this insidious pattern, a subtle but constant reinforcement that Mark's needs were bigger, more important, more deserving of investment, be it time, money, or emotional energy. His successes were celebrated with fanfare, mine were met with quiet nods or a quick change of subject. My job was just serving, my apartment was small, my dream was an expensive hobby. Mark's promotions were discussed at length, his plans for the future treated with reverence. It felt like we were living in two different families, even though we shared the same last name, the same history. I remembered one time, years ago, when my old clunker of a car finally died. I needed a new one to get to work, simple as that. Dad helped Mark buy a brand new sedan when he graduated, shiny and expensive. For me, they suggested I save up more, maybe look at used cars from a dealership notorious for lemons. I ended up taking out a small, high-interest loan that took me ages to pay off, while Mark zipped around in his gift. It was just one moment, one small thing, but these small things added up, stacking like the dirty dishes in my sink after a late shift. Another time, Mark decided he needed help painting his new apartment downtown. He called me, not asking if I was free, but telling me he expected me there Saturday morning. I had worked a double Friday and was scheduled for another Saturday night, but I said yes. Of course, I said yes. I spent my precious day off hunched over, painting walls, while Mark supervised, occasionally fetching us water but mostly on his phone. Mom and Dad stopped by with lunch, fussing over Mark, asking about his important job, barely acknowledging my presence beyond a quick, "Thanks for helping your brother." Holly. It was invisible labor, the kind women are so often expected to perform, fueled by obligation and the desperate hope for approval. I didn't talk about my writing with them. How could I? I imagined telling them, and hearing the inevitable, "That's nice, dear, but shouldn't you be focusing on a more stable career?" Or worse, "Must cost a lot of money, all those courses and books. Are you sure that's wise?" My dream felt fragile, easily dismissed by their practicality, their ingrained belief that my aspirations should be sensible, quiet, and preferably free. So, I kept it hidden, my little fire burning low and steady, fueled by stubbornness and a quiet hope. I wrote after work. I read screenwriting books from the library. I listened to podcasts while walking to the bus stop. It was mine. The dinner on that night was at my parents' house. It was one of Mark's visits home, a semi-annual event that always felt a bit like a command performance. Mom had made a roast, Dad had the good wine out, and the air was thick with forced cheerfulness and the underlying pressure to make sure Mark felt celebrated. We were halfway through the meal when the conversation lulled. Mark had been holding court, talking about his latest big deal, his long hours, the demands of his job. My parents were listening with rapt attention, nodding along, beaming with pride. I had been contributing polite ohs and ahs, mentally editing a scene in my current script. Then, out of the blue, Mark turned to me. "Still working at the diner hole?" he asked, not unkindly, but with that familiar undertone of gentle condescension. "Yeah, Still there, I replied, feeling my usual defensiveness prickle. Keeping busy. Right, he said, taking a sip of wine. You know, Mom was asking if you could help Dad sort out some of his business records again. He's getting swamped. I nodded, even though the thought of spending my limited free time wading through Dad's chaotic filing system made me tired just thinking about it. Sure, Mark. I can probably swing by next week. Good, he said, a satisfied look on his face. You're good with that stuff. Unlike me, I just don't have the time. Too much on my plate. He chuckled, and my parents smiled, nodding in agreement. Mark is so busy, so important. The unspoken comparison hung in the air. Then he looked around, gesturing vaguely with his fork. You know, maybe it's time you thought about something more substantial, Hull. You're not getting any younger. Serving tables, I mean, it's fine for now, but it's not exactly a career, is it? And that, writing thing? Still doing that? The casual dismissal landed like a blow. Not exactly a career. My dream, the thing I poured my limited energy and funds into, reduced to a trivial pursuit. It wasn't just him. It was the echo of every time my parents had gently steered conversations away from my future plans towards something realistic. Something that felt less like my own aspiration and more like settling. I felt my face heat up, but I couldn't find my voice immediately. The familiar script told me to laugh it off, to agree, to make myself smaller. He doesn't mean anything by it. He's just being practical. It's what I'm working on, Mark, I managed, my voice thin. It's important to me. He waved a hand dismissively. Yeah, important. But important doesn't pay the bills or set you up for retirement, does it? You need to be smart, Hole. Like, actually smart about your future. He glanced at my parents, who offered weak, uncomfortable smiles. I'm just saying, you should probably think about finding something steady. Maybe Mom can ask around. Mrs. Henderson at the bank mentioned they might be hiring tellers. Not exciting, but stable. A bank teller. His suggestion hung in the air, a damp, gray blanket smothering the last sparks of my ambition. It wasn't just about the job, it was the complete lack of recognition, the assumption that my own desires were irrelevant, that I needed to be slotted into a sensible, conventional box, preferably one that left me available to help them when needed. I felt a hot surge of anger, quickly followed by the familiar ache of disappointment. Why did I keep hoping they would see me? See the effort, the passion, the me that existed beyond their expectations? Before I could formulate a response, before I could either lash out or shrink away, the television volume suddenly increased. The local news anchor's voice cut through the tense silence. Developing story this evening, the anchor said, his tone urgent. Reports are coming in about a significant investment deal involving several local parties and a major out-of-state development firm. Sources confirm the long-rumored acquisition of the old downtown industrial complex is now official. While names are still being confirmed, early information suggests prominent local figures like Robert Sterling. My dad's name, Robert Sterling. My father's name echoed in the dining room, making everyone freeze. My dad owned a small construction business. He wasn't a prominent local figure in the world of major real estate deals, not like this. And his business partner, Edward Davis, along with other silent partners, have successfully closed on the multi-million-dollar acquisition. This is expected to pave the way for the long-anticipated luxury condo and retail development. Multi-million-dollar acquisition, luxury condo and retail development. My father? And Edward Davis? Edward Davis was Mark's girlfriend's father. A wealthy investor, well known in the city's financial circles. My parents were staring at the television, their faces pale. Mark had dropped his fork, a clatter that sounded deafening in the sudden quiet. Sources close to the deal indicate the project has been in the works for over 2 years, involving complex financing and multiple stakeholders. The involvement of local figures like Sterling and Davis was key to securing community support and navigating local regulations. Over 2 years, complex financing, multiple stakeholders. My mind reeled. Over 2 years ago, Dad's business had been struggling. He'd been talking about downsizing, maybe even retiring early. He'd complained about not having enough capital, about missed opportunities, and I had quietly offered him a small loan from my savings to help cover some unexpected equipment repairs, money I'd been saving for a down payment on a slightly less old car, maybe even to take a screenwriting workshop. He'd accepted it with a grateful squeeze of my hand, promising to pay me back when things picked up. Things had apparently picked up spectacularly, without a word to me. My eyes flickered from the television screen, showing grainy footage of a dilapidated brick building, to my family's faces. Dad looked stunned, maybe a little scared. Mom looked like she might faint. And Mark looked furious. Not surprised, but furious. The anchor continued, listing more names, discussing potential economic impact. But I barely heard it. My world had narrowed to this room, this table, and the three people sitting across from me. What? What is this? I finally managed, my voice trembling. My dad swallowed hard. Holly, it's complicated. Complicated? My voice was rising. Your name is on the news. As a partner in a multi-million-dollar development? It's not exactly like that, Mom said quickly, her hands fluttering. It's just a small part, a small investment, nothing to worry about. A small investment? I echoed, the words feeling alien. A small investment doesn't get you named on the evening news as a key local figure. And it certainly didn't align with the constant narrative of financial struggle that had been used, subtly or not so subtly, to explain why they couldn't help me, why I needed to be the one lending money, the one putting my own needs aside. It's been in the works for a while, Dad admitted, avoiding my gaze. A quiet opportunity. Didn't want to get everyone's hopes up in case it fell through. 2 years, Dad? I stared at him. The news said 2 years. You've been working on this for 2 years. While telling me the business was struggling. While I was lending you money? That was different, Holly, he said, a note of irritation creeping into his voice. That was for immediate needs. This is an investment. An investment, I repeated flatly. The word felt tainted. Mark finally spoke, his voice tight with frustration. This is unbelievable, he muttered, not looking at me but at our parents. I can't believe you let this leak. We talked about this. My head snapped towards him. You knew? Mark flinched slightly, then recovered. Well, yeah, of course I knew. It involves Edward's family. I've been advising Dad on the financial side, making sure he didn't get taken advantage of. Advising Dad, making sure he didn't get taken advantage of. My brother, the golden child, the one who just moments ago was telling me to give up my dream and get a boring bank job because I needed to be actually smart about my future, knew about this huge investment, was apparently involved in it, and had kept it a secret from me too. Not only that, he had the audacity to act like he was the wronged party because the news had leaked. You knew about this, I said, the realization sinking in like a stone. You knew Mom and Dad were involved in this for 2 years, working on a multi-million-dollar acquisition, while they were telling me they were strapped for cash, while I was giving Dad money, while you were borrowing money from me for emergencies. Mark shifted uncomfortably. It wasn't like that, Holly. It was private family business. Not everyone needed to know. Not everyone? I laughed, a harsh, broken sound. Who was everyone? Just me, Mark? Was I the only one not privy to the big secret? We didn't want to burden you, Mom interjected weakly. You have your own life, Holly. My own life? I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. The dinner, the carefully curated normalcy, lay in ruins around us. My own life involves working until my feet are numb, saving every penny, and lending money to help this family, while this family is secretly getting involved in multi-million-dollar deals. My voice was shaking, but for the first time I didn't care if it shook. The dam had broken. All the years of subtle slights, of being overlooked, of feeling less than, crashed over me. The painting I did for Mark, the loans I never saw again, the quiet requests for help that were never reciprocated, the dismissal of my dreams, it all coalesced into this one massive, undeniable betrayal. You told me I wasn't being actually smart about my future, I said, turning to Mark, my eyes blazing. You, who knew about this deal, who was advising Dad. You, who borrows money and offers unsolicited, condescending advice on how I should live my life. You had the nerve to sit here and tell me my dream wasn't a career, that I needed something stable, while this was happening right under my nose. Mark glared at me. Oh, here we go. Making it all about you, typical. This is a huge deal, a potential game changer for Dad and Mom. It's not about your little hobbies. Not about my little hobbies? The words were venomous. It's about trust, Mark. It's about being lied to for years. It's about being treated like I'm some kind of backup plan. Someone you can ask for help when you need it, but who doesn't deserve to know what's actually going on in the family's finances. We didn't lie, Dad said, his voice firmer now, defensive. We just didn't tell you everything. It was confidential. Confidential from me, I said, the pain sharp and sudden. Was it confidential from Mark? Number? Was it confidential from Edward Davis's family? Obviously not, just me. The reliable daughter, the helpful sister, the one who always shows up, the one who clearly isn't important enough to be part of the real family business. Mom started crying. Quiet, dramatic sobs. Holly, please don't say that. Of course you're important. Are I? I challenged, my voice cracking. Because it doesn't feel like it. It feels like I'm just a resource. Someone you can tap into when you need something, but who isn't worth investing in, either financially or emotionally. My dream is a joke, my job is temporary, my financial contributions are forgotten loans, and your major life changes are a secret kept from me. Mark stood up, pushing his chair back. This is ridiculous. You're overreacting, Holly. It's just business. Why are you making such a big deal out of this? Why am I making a big deal? I repeated, the incredulity making me lightheaded. Because this isn't just business, Mark. This is about our family. It's about how you see me, how you treat me. For years, I've felt like I was on the outside looking in, and this just confirms it. You had this huge secret, this potential for financial security that you kept from me while simultaneously making me feel like I was failing because I wasn't on some fast track to wealth. We were protecting you, Mom wailed. Protecting me? From what? From knowing my family was doing well? From feeling secure? Or were you protecting yourselves? Protecting your narrative that you were just ordinary people, making ends meet, who needed the quiet daughter to pitch in. I didn't wait for an answer. The hypocrisy was suffocating. And Mark, I turned back to him, fixing him with a stare. Don't you ever tell me my dream isn't a career again? Don't you ever act like my life is less than? You have no idea what I put into my writing, what I put into my life, while also trying to be there for all of you. And clearly, none of that mattered. The room was thick with silence, punctuated only by Mom's sniffles and my own ragged breathing. The television was still on in the background, a calm, disembodied voice reporting on something unrelated now. The roast on the table sat forgotten, growing cold. I can't do this, I whispered, the fight draining out of me, replaced by a profound weariness and sorrow. I can't sit here and pretend anymore. This isn't a family dinner, this is. I don't even know what this is. I walked out of the dining room, grabbed my coat from the hall closet, and pulled my keys from my bag. My parents called my name, their voices a mixture of alarm and residual defensiveness. Mark stayed silent. I didn't turn back. I walked out the front door, into the cool Reno night air. The city lights seemed sharper, brighter than usual. My car felt like a safe, small cocoon as I got in. I drove aimlessly for a while, the news anchor's voice and Mark's condescending tone playing on repeat in my head. Robert Sterling and his business partner. Not exactly a career, is it? The contrast was stark, brutal. The life they presented to the world, the carefully managed narrative of modest means and hard work, and the secret reality of significant investment and ambition. And I, the one who had believed the narrative, who had helped prop it up with my own limited resources, was the last to know. Tears streamed down my face, hot and furious, then cold and heavy. It wasn't just the money, though the thought of the loans I'd given them, the hours I'd spent on their behalf, now felt like a cruel cosmic joke. It was the emotional exploitation. The way they had used my reliability, my desire for their approval, my quiet nature against me. The way they had implicitly, constantly, devalued my life choices while secretly pursuing their own large-scale ambitions. I pulled over at a deserted park overlooking the city. The lights stretched out below, a glittering tapestry of anonymous lives. I sat there for a long time, letting the sobs rack my body. It was grief, I realized. Grief for the family I thought I had. Grief for the version of myself who had tried so hard to fit in, to be enough, only to discover I was never even playing the same game. In the quiet darkness, a new feeling began to stir beneath the pain. A fierce, protective anger for myself. For the hours I'd sacrificed, the money I'd given, the dreams I'd almost let wither under their dismissive gaze. Not exactly a career. Mark's words, intended to cut me down, now felt like a challenge. My writing was important, my dream mattered, and my worth wasn't dependent on their recognition or their secrets. The drive home was long and silent. When I got back to my apartment, the small, humble space I had sometimes felt apologetic for, it suddenly felt like a sanctuary. It was mine. Every stick of furniture, every book, every messy pile of screenwriting notes, it represented my effort, my life, built without secret partners or hidden investments, just hard work and determination. The next few days were a blur of emotional turbulence. My phone buzzed constantly with missed calls and texts from my parents, and a few from Mark. I ignored them all. I couldn't talk to them. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Not in the same way. I took a couple of days off work, something I rarely did. I needed space to think, to breathe, to process. I walked for hours around Reno, watched the Truckee River flow, the water indifferent to my pain. I talked to my closest friend, Sarah, who listened patiently, her quiet outrage a balm to my raw wounds. She didn't offer platitudes or excuses for my family. She just validated my feelings, her simple, "That's messed up, Holly," a lifeline. I started to see everything in a new light. The times Mom had asked me to pick up groceries just this once that turned into a weekly chore. The weekends I'd spent helping Dad with odd jobs at his business, unpaid and often interrupting my writing time. The way Mark would casually mention his financial stress right before asking for a loan. It wasn't just isolated incidents, it was a pattern of exploitation, masked by the language of family obligation and love. And I had been complicit, through my silence, through my eagerness to please, through my inability to set boundaries. Setting boundaries felt terrifying. It meant confrontation, potential conflict, maybe even losing the limited connection I had with my family. But the thought of going back, of pretending that dinner hadn't happened, of continuing to live that muted, accommodating life, felt even worse. It felt like agreeing to disappear. I knew I had to talk to them eventually, or at least communicate my position. I decided to start small. I sent a text message to my parents and Mark. Simple, direct. "I'm not ready to talk yet. I'm hurt and need space. Please respect that." The response was immediate, though not exactly respectful. Mark texted back within minutes. "Seriously, Holly? Still? It's been days. You're blowing this way out of proportion." My mom called, leaving a tearful voicemail about how worried they were, how I was breaking their hearts. Dad sent a text saying, "We need to talk. This isn't fair to us." Not fair to them? The sheer audacity of it left me breathless. After years of taking, of lying by omission, of devaluing me, they were concerned about what was fair to them. It solidified my resolve. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a fundamental difference in how we saw our relationships. I drafted and redrafted letters in my head, trying to articulate the depth of the betrayal, the years of feeling invisible, but words felt inadequate. What I needed wasn't just to explain my hurt, I needed to change the dynamic, and that meant changing me. I went back to work. Serving tables felt different now. Before, it was just a means to an end, a performance. Now, I saw the people around me differently. The customers, their lives happening independent of mine. My coworkers, navigating their own struggles. It wasn't about disappearing into the role, it was about being present in the exchange, but maintaining my own space, my own energy. I started saying no to extra shifts when I needed the time to write. I stopped picking up the slack for lazy coworkers, small acts of reclaiming my time and energy. The hardest step was facing my family directly. After about a week, I knew I couldn't avoid it forever. I decided to meet my parents first, without Mark. A neutral location, a quiet coffee shop far from their house. The meeting was difficult. They were defensive, still insisting they hadn't lied, just omitted details. They brought up all the things they had done for me over the years, a subtle attempt to make me feel ungrateful. "We paid for your braces, Holly," Mom said, as if orthodontics negated years of emotional and financial imbalance. "And we always had a roof over your head," Dad added. "I know you did," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "And I'm grateful for that. But this isn't about basic needs. This is about trust. It's about communication. It's about how you chose to share important information and resources within the family." I laid it out, calmly, but firmly. The loans I'd given, the favors I'd done, the way my aspirations had been dismissed. I talked about how hurt I was to find out about the investment from a news report after being led to believe money was tight. "We didn't want you to feel left out," Dad said, a flicker of something that might have been guilt in his eyes. "But it was a risky venture at first. We didn't want you worrying." "Or maybe," I said, cutting him off, "you didn't want me to know you had significant funds available while you were accepting money from me. Maybe you didn't want me to ask for help myself. Maybe you just didn't think I was capable or important enough to be included." Mom started crying again. "Holly, stop it. You're being cruel." "Cruel?" The word landed with a thud. "Is it cruel to tell the truth? Is it cruel to expect honesty and reciprocity from your family?" I looked at them. Really looked. They weren't monsters, not in their own minds. They were just people who had fallen into comfortable, harmful patterns. People who favored one child, who relied too heavily on another, who justified their actions with convenience and a warped sense of protection. "I need things to change," I stated, my voice gaining strength. "I can't keep being the person who just gives and gives without being seen or valued. I need honesty. I need my boundaries respected, and I need you to understand that my life, my work, my dream, they are real and they matter, regardless of what you think." I told them I wouldn't be available for last-minute requests anymore, that if I lent money, it would be a gift, not a loan they could pretend didn't exist. That I wouldn't be sorting Dad's papers or running errands for Mom unless it was a genuine emergency and I was truly available. And that I wouldn't be tolerating Mark's condescending remarks about my choices. They didn't react well. There was more defensiveness, some anger, a lot of hurt feelings, theirs naturally. They accused me of being selfish, of abandoning the family. It was painful to hear, but I held my ground. This wasn't about being selfish. It was about self-preservation. The conversation with Mark was separate, and even more volatile. He was indignant, refusing to see his behavior as anything other than helpful guidance and normal brother-sister dynamics. He genuinely believed I was overreacting, being dramatic. "It's just money, Holly," he'd said, exasperated. "And Dad's investment is his business. It has nothing to do with you." "That's where you're wrong, Mark," I'd replied, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "It has everything to do with me. It's about the years of pretense, the lies, the way you've all taken my support for granted while keeping major parts of your lives secret. It's about the disrespect. He ended up hanging up on me, clearly frustrated that I wasn't backing down or accepting his version of reality. It hurt, a deep, cutting pain, but it also felt liberating. I had spoken my truth. I had set my boundaries. The period that followed was difficult. Family gatherings became awkward, strained. I attended some, declining others. I said no more often than I said yes. I didn't lend money. I didn't offer unsolicited help. I focused my energy on myself, on my writing, on building a life that felt authentic to me. There was pushback, of course. Guilt trips from Mom, passive aggression from Dad, outright avoidance from Mark. They didn't like the new dynamic. They preferred the old, accommodating Holly. But I couldn't go back. The door had closed. The person I had been, the one who prioritized their comfort over her own well-being, no longer existed. I started going to therapy, which was incredibly helpful. My therapist helped me understand the family system I had grown up in, the roles we had all played, and why it had been so hard for me to break free. I learned that my worth wasn't tied to their approval or my ability to meet their needs. It was inherent. Slowly, gradually, things shifted. My relationships with my family changed fundamentally. The closeness I had longed for, the easy connection, wasn't there. Maybe it had never truly been there. But in its place, I found something else: peace. A quiet, solid peace that came from living in alignment with myself. My writing thrived. With the energy I had previously spent on managing family expectations and resentment, I poured myself into my scripts. I took that screenwriting workshop I had dreamed of, using my own savings, feeling a fierce sense of pride. I connected with other writers, finding a new kind of community, one based on shared passion and mutual respect. The financial secrets of my family eventually faded into the background. The development went forward, their investment paid off, or so I heard through the grapevine, not from them directly, of course. It didn't matter anymore. Their wealth, their secrets, were theirs. My life was mine. I learned to appreciate the quiet moments, the simple joys, the feeling of sunshine on my face during my walk home from the diner, the satisfaction of writing a scene that finally clicked, the comfort of my little apartment, my sanctuary. There were still moments of sadness, of mourning the family I wished I had. But the overwhelming feeling was one of liberation. I was no longer tied to their expectations, no longer diminished by their lack of vision for me. I was free to be exactly who I was, on my own terms. My dream, the one Mark had so easily dismissed, started to feel less like a fragile secret and more like a solid path. I wasn't just serving tables anymore. I was a writer who served tables to pay the bills. The distinction was subtle, but profound. It changed everything. It changed how I held myself, how I interacted with the world. I realized that the truest investment I could make was in myself, in my dreams, my well-being, my voice. And that investment was paying off in ways that money couldn't buy. It was building a life I was proud of, stone by stone, scene by scene. Hey, I'm back. Thanks for sticking with me through that story. Telling it all out like this, it's still raw, you know? The pain doesn't just vanish, but it changes. It becomes a scar instead of an open wound. It becomes a reminder of where I came from, and how far I've come. That night, that dinner, the news report, it was a catalyst. It shattered the illusion I was living under. It forced me to see the truth, even though the truth was incredibly painful. And seeing the truth was the first step towards changing my life. I'm still in Reno. I'm still working as a server sometimes, but I'm writing more than ever. My dream feels closer, more real. I've learned that setting boundaries isn't about being selfish, it's about self-respect. It's about showing others how you expect to be treated and being willing to walk away if they can't meet you there. It's not easy. Family dynamics run deep. and changing them can feel like trying to redirect a river. There's resistance, there are ripples. But my peace, my sense of self-worth, that's non-negotiable now. I protect that fierce. If you're listening to this, and any part of it resonates with you, the feeling of being overlooked, the pain of betrayal, the struggle to find your voice, I want you to know you're not alone. It takes courage to see the truth, and even more courage to act on it. Your feelings are valid. Your dreams are valid. You are valid. Don't let anyone, not even the people closest to you, dim your light or tell you your life isn't important. You deserve to be seen, to be heard, and to pursue whatever sets your soul on fire. It's your life. It's worth investing in. Thank you for listening. If this story connected with you, please give it a like. It helps me know these stories matter. And if you want to hear more stories like this, or just join this community, hit that subscribe button. Leave a comment below and let me know your thoughts, or share a little piece of your own journey if you feel comfortable. Let's support each other. Remember, your worth is not up for debate. It just is. Be proud of who you are, and don't be afraid to stand in your own light.